Hey yo, what is up FPG fam? Further here and welcome back to another Aether Gazer video. So today we're going to be talking about the girl Bastet. We're going to be breaking down her skills, going over my current build for her, and showing some gameplay. So I do hope you enjoy. Hope you get some value from today's video. Now before we jump in, just a few quick announcements. First and foremost, I know this video is extremely late. It's late due to me going out of town, but also the I don't know, day and a half long maintenance that occurred. That kind of threw things back a huge deal. Also, trying to build up Bastet has been a chore and a half with the resources, and I'm going to show you that I'm not even completely... That's so adorable. I haven't even completely built her out entirely, which will, once again I'll show you here in just a second. So that has been a thing, and then also I've been trying to focus on building Anubis and everything. It's just been very tough as of late. It's been very tough with the resources. So that is the reason for the video being late. The other announcement I did want to mention is that we did get into the Triple Z, the Zenless Zone Zero beta. Could not be more excited about that. So expect some content for Zenless Zone Zero in the form of live streams and videos. I want to give out my impressions of it. I want to do some gameplay video, of course, and then do an overview probably at the end of my overall thoughts when it comes to Zenless Zone Zero. So be on the lookout for that. So there might be some Aether Gazer videos that get pushed back and kind of get put on the back burner, because obviously the Zenless Zone Zero beta is going to take precedent because it's only for a limited time, and I have to get as much out of it as I possibly can before it goes away. So those are the announcements. With that being said, let's go ahead and talk about Bastet. This was one of my most anticipated modifiers to drop in the game. I was instantly drawn to this modifier. I love her design. I love what she brings to the table. Obviously, she has one of the best skins in the game currently. I think this skin is 100% worth it. I haven't gotten it just yet, as you can see, but we will be getting that here soon. But let's go over what my Bastet has on her. So she is Omega rank. I did Omega rank her. I only pulled one copy, so I Omega ranked her through the event, as well as through the shards that you can get in the shop. So that's how we got her to Omega rank, and for that I have her at level 80, completely maxed out. Here are my stats. Stats are pretty through the roof. Now keep in mind, I think when you triple S, her crit rate goes to 20%. Like, you get an additional 20% crit rate, so that's why my crit rate's so high. And then crit damage 84%. Got extremely lucky with the stats, almost 7,000 attack. So we're looking pretty spicy, if I do say so myself. Stat wise, I think she has like the best spread of stats on all of my modifiers to date. So really cooking there. And then her skills, obviously we have them all maxed out. Let's go over her skills really quickly because it's pretty straightforward, right? She's not a complicated modifier by any means. So her basic attack is going to do shadow damage, and then on her last sequence of the attack, or the last strike I should say, you're going to enter the Divine Gaze state for 9 seconds. You'll know when you're in the Divine Gaze state because it has a purple aura on the border of the screen. That's how you know you're there. Now when you're in the Divine Gaze state, things change. We'll get to that here in just a second. So skill 1, you're essentially going to pounce forward. You're going to do shadow damage equal to that amount right there. And when you're in the Divine Gaze state, you're also going to reduce the shadow resistance of the locked on enemy hit by 9% for 7 seconds. So you're going to have some shadow resistant shred on the enemies, allowing you to do more damage. And then after you do that, the Divine Gaze state expires immediately. So, and then you gain 1 trace upon hit. I did forget to mention she is a Nile Gen Zone modifier, and she's melee and she's trace as well, and a shadow damage dealer. I said that in a very convoluted way, but that is Bastet in terms of what she is. Now moving over to skill 2. For skill 2, you're going to go ahead and jump up in the air, you disappear, and then you lunge forward a pretty good distance, right? It's decent distance, and you're going to go ahead and provide shadow damage. Not provide, you're going to deal shadow damage. And if you're in the Divine Gaze state, you're going to inflict stun on the enemy for 2 seconds. Now, I'll be quite honest with you, as much as I've been using Bastet, I have not used the skill 2 all that much. There are some benefits to it. I like the distance that you go, but sometimes it's not far enough. Also, the damage is just slightly lower than on skill 1, but also the Divine Gaze state aspect of it. The stun is nice, but it's only for 2 seconds. It's not really anything to write home about, if I'm being honest with you. I find myself using the skill 1 more often. You are getting that shadow resistant shred, and I find that to be more beneficial to be able to do more damage rather than the stun. So a lot of times I'm just doing skill 1 and skill 3 and hardly ever doing skill 2. That's just what I find. But you know, to each their own. Everybody has their own gameplay style. And then of course you're going to gain a trace right there. Moving over to skill 3, for skill 3 you're going to expend 1 trace and you're going to enter the Divine Gaze state. So you can proc the Divine Gaze state automatically with the skill 3, or you can do it on the last strike of your basic attack. So there's 2 ways to get into the Divine Gaze state, once again for 9 seconds. And then when in the Divine Gaze state, the skill 3 becomes Goddess Execution. And when you're in Goddess Execution, you're going to do shadow damage and it's going to be AoE. And in Divine Gaze state, it's going to expire after doing that. So what happens is that you do the skill 3, Bastet, she does a little stance, and then your skill 3 will then highlight, and that will allow you to do the Goddess Execution attack, where you kind of zip around and you do a bit of shadow damage when you're doing that. So what I'm finding is that the skill 3 is essentially spammable. So the way I've been finding the best routes in terms of combination or combos is to go ahead and get into the Divine Gaze state by her sequence attack, and then do her skill 1, and then you have skill 3. You can pop skill 3, and then you do skill 3, and it's on such a low cooldown. You're spamming skill 3 all the time. It's up all the time, and that's where a lot of damage is going to come from. And I'm just rotating between skill 1 and skill 3. So Shadow Resistance Shred, back to skill 3, do skill 3, spam it again, then Shadow Resistance Shred with skill 1, and I'm just going back and forth, and it's a lot of fun. You're doing a lot of damage. You're all over the place. It's a really good time. Now moving over to the ultimate, this one essentially you're going to go ahead and deal shadow damage, and it increases the non-dot ultimate skill damage dealt to normal enemies by 0.5% for every 1% HP the enemy has, and then up to a 50% boost in total, and then increases non-dot damage ultimate skill damage dealt to elite enemies and bosses by 0.5% for every 1% mod index. So there are differences between the normal enemies and then the elite or boss enemies. And then up to a 50% boost in total. Enemies in modified mode are taken to have 100% mod index when in modified mode. So what I find is that I prefer to do the ultimate as often as I can in modified mode. That's where you're going to get the most benefits, in my opinion. But nonetheless, it's a hard-hitting ult. It does a lot of damage. It hits multiple enemies, and I do really like it. And once again, I try and do that while it's in the modified mode to get the most benefits from it. And then you gain an 8% ultimate skill charge when the enemy's shadow resistance is reduced. That's why I like to spam the skill 1 more than the skill 2. And then the effect can trigger up to once every 1 second. So you have to keep that in mind. And then of course she has the ultimate skill chain, the best ultimate skill chain in the game visually, with Jin A. And that's another problem. I don't have Jin A built up. I don't have the resources to build up Jin A, so I can't use the ultimate skill chain, but it's actually a really good one. It's going to increase the non-dot ultimate skill damage dealt to normal enemies by 0.5%. Once again, similar to what her original ultimate is, but this is 0.5% for every 1% HP the enemy has, up to a 50% boost in total, and then increases non-dot ultimate skill damage dealt to elite enemies and bosses by 5.5% for every 1% mod index the enemy has, up to a 50% boost in total. And then enemies in modified mode are taken to have a 100% mod index. And then Jin A's is going to resist or do the resistance shred of physical fire, thunder, wind, and shadow up to 30% for 12 seconds. So that's an additional shadow resistance shred of 30%, which is really good for Bastet. So it's going to just allow her to hit even harder. So having Jin A on the team is going to be pretty essential for that in particular. And then all the other benefits you get from the ultimate skill chain, and then the visuals just in general are top-notch, chef's kiss. And then the dodge is really important as well with Bastet. You have to keep that in mind. When you do the extremity dodge and you trigger it, you tap the normal attack again. Once again, I refer to this as being very similar to Oceanus. Within 3 seconds of triggering, and you're going to go ahead and teleport behind the enemy, and you're going to do another skill damage, or it's going to be considered another skill attack, dealing shadow damage equal to 200% attack in total. And then the mod goes into Divine Gaze state upon hitting an enemy. So you go right into Divine Gaze state. Then you can do the skill 1 for the shadow resistance shred. Then you do the skill 3, go back into Divine Gaze state, do skill 3. And then you can see how things get pretty nutty from there, right? So the dodge is extremely important to be able to do a lot more damage and play Bastet more effectively. Moving over to the access key. Now, I don't have the signature functor, which we'll go over here in just a second. I think the signature functor is really good for Bastet. It's going to amplify her damage a ton, but I don't think it's necessarily needed for her. It's not one that you have to have. You could probably get it down the road. In terms of another free-to-play option that you can go with instead, you can go with the 5-star general one that you can get from the shop. When combat resources are expended, increases skill damage for 2 seconds. For every 1% of the highest combat resource expended, increase skill damage to 0.32%. Yeah, it's 0.32%. Max effect skill damage boost is 32%. It just allows your skills to hit harder. It's nothing crazy. Nile doesn't have any crazy like general functors that you can put on your modifier. I mean, this one, when you get hit, you increase attack by 12% and defense by 5%. I mean, that could be beneficial. You could use that. It's just not something I would really recommend. And then increases combat resource charge speed by 33%. She's a trace modifier, right? There's not a whole lot of options. I mean, this one's sneaky good, especially if you get some transcendence on this. Increases ultimate skill damage by 32%. You could transcend that up. Your ultimate's going to be hitting like a truck. But I mean, ideally you would want to get her signature functor because it's far and away the best thing that you can put on her. So let's go ahead and take a look at that for just a second. It just does a lot. It does a lot, but once again, it's not necessary. You don't have to have it, but it is pretty good. What is it? This one right here. Okay, so for this one, you're gonna go ahead and increase the mod's armor pierce by 20% and crit damage by 20% right off the bat. That in itself is just phenomenal. Far and away supersedes anything that you can put on her free to play. And then increases the non-dot crit rate by 100% when attacking the enemy from behind. I understand there's a condition to this, but there are plenty of situations where you're attacking the enemies from behind, especially in boss situations, especially when the boss is aggroed on one of your AI companions or teammates. So this is something that you can realistically get quite often, in my opinion. And then enter the Night Shadow state when casting Bastet's Caprice and become invisible for 9 seconds. So you can become invisible for 9 seconds. And that Bastet Caprice is the skill 3, if you remember. And then Night Shadow increases movement speed by 20%. I don't know how valuable the invisibility is, to be quite honest with you. I don't think it's super valuable because you're running all over the place. You're attacking consistently. So I don't know how important it is. It might be valuable in some situations. I don't, it's cool. Anyways, moving on from there, increases movement speed by 20% and increase non-dot independent damage dealt on one hit by 20%, and then exits Night Shadow state when the skill hits or after taking damage. So my assumption is as soon as you hit the enemy with the skill, or if you get hit, then the invisibility in the Night Shadow is over. But if you're able to get that one hit, it's going to do an additional 20% from my understanding. And then you have some movement speed. But honestly, the highlight is the top half. The increased mod's armor pierce by 20% and crit damage by 20%. That's pretty massive. And so I think the functor is really good, but once again, not necessary. It's not something you have to chase and try and get. I would love to have it. I'm definitely going for it, but we'll see. Anyways, moving on to the sigils. The sigils, as you can see, this is where I left off trying to build up Bastet. I just don't have any reconstructs to be able to get this to 60, unfortunately, because I have to reconstruct it to be specific on Bastet, and I can't do that right now. Also, I have Bastet Omega, and I want to put a 2-piece Nimble set on her here in slots 5 and 6. But once again, resources. I just don't have the resources. Even if I was to get the Nimble set, I wouldn't be able to build it up. So I'm just rocking this for now until I can actually do that. But this is the Trace set and then the Shadow set, as you can see there. And for skill effects, 5, 7, and 8. Once again, got pretty lucky when it came to my rolls on this. I didn't re-roll this. This is what I got right off the bat. So really nice. Moving over to the warps. The warps I'm still trying to figure out. I went with the cooldown on skill 3 because I noticed it was spammable, but I really don't think this is necessary, to be honest with you. So I'm probably going to redo this one. I do like the level up on skill 3 though, because you're doing it all the time, so why not get more damage? I'm probably going to try and just get more damage out of the skill 3. The other ones are pretty par of the course for a DPS modifier, melee damage, right? So I think this was the only mistake. I'm probably going to go ahead and switch that. But that's what I have warp wise and still need to work on it. And then for Aether Codes, I don't have them all unlocked. Actually, I can unlock one right now. Been working on getting them unlocked, but I'm going 2 red, 1 yellow for the time being. And the reason being, I think this is going to be probably the most optimal. You're getting a cooldown on your dodge effect shortened, so you can do that more often. I talked about why the dodge is important to have. And then you're going to grant 1 stack of crit damage boost for each skill hit or normal attack hit. You can't get hit or else this goes away. But it increases the mod's crit damage by 9%, and that effect stacks up to 9 times. So if you have it, like my crit damage is nice right now, you can get this even higher and do some nutty stuff. And then if you have the signature functor, you get an additional, what, 20% crit like your crit damage could be through the roof. As long as you don't get hit, your crit damage could be pretty nutty. So, and once again, that's just going to lead to more damage. That's why Bastet can absolutely pop off. And then for the last one, increases Goddess Execution's base damage by 30%. That is the skill 3. When it's highlighted, that's when you're going to be able to do even more damage. And once again, you're spamming that, so this is really good. And then casting the skill 3 also inflicts the Moon Trail mark, and you'll see that with the purple moon above the enemy's head on the lockdown enemy for 9 seconds. You can only have one on one enemy at a time, and then it increases the mod's non-dot damage dealt to an enemy with the Moon Trail mark by 18%. Essentially, that enemy is going to get more damage dealt upon them. So you pair that with the skill 1, you know, shredding their shadow resistance, and then you go ahead and then do the skill 3, and then you do that again. You're just doing a lot of damage to that one individual. That's why I think Bastet is really good against bosses, because she's able to focus on an enemy and do a lot of damage to that said enemy. So she's really good in boss encounters, but she's also good against mobs as well, because she has a lot of AoE on her attacks. She's able to hit a lot of different enemies, so she's really good. Just all around a fantastic A rank modifier DPS. You really need to build her up. You need to put a lot of resources into her to be able to see her really cook and pop off. She does well, and she is a very strong modifier. You just have to understand to play her. I wanted to mention that with her normal attack, it's a little funky sometimes. At least for me anyways, it puts me in some awkward situations, because it's either on her second or her third sequence, it teleports behind the enemy, so it moves you. And sometimes you move when you don't want to move, because then you actually get hit when you weren't trying to get hit, because you were in the position that you wanted to be in, and then it teleports you to a position you did not want to be in. So sometimes that can be a little awkward, and you have to play around that, at least for me anyways. But that's the only gripe I have. Other than that, she's phenomenal. For an A-rank modifier, she absolutely cooks. She looks fantastic, and she gets the job done. Niall's not in the great situation. This is a great transition to talk about teams. Niall's not in the greatest of positions. If you so happen to have gotten Anubis, they seem to pair really well, because Anubis is Shadow. She's Shadow. The Niall gen zone's really good, and so she can shred the resistance of the Shadow against the enemies. So then that'll let Anubis to cook a little bit more. So they seem to be a good pairing and could do really well. But outside of that, in terms of the Niall team, there's nothing really to write home about that works well with Bastet to let her do what she wants to do in terms of the most damage, right? So when you're looking at that, I mean, one of the best teams that I think you could put together is with Jene for that ultimate skill chain. I think Jene is always going to be a staple with Bastet for that skill chain specifically. And then it's just looking for a third option. So a third option that I think is really good, and probably the best team you could put together, is Jene, Bastet, and Hera. That team is going to be phenomenal. They work out really well together. Another team that you could put together if you really wanted to, you could do Jene, Bastet, and then you could do Arctic Abyss Poseidon. Always a good teammate that you could put alongside anybody for the freeze. You could also look at Heimdall in that third slot as well if you wanted to. Once again, Anubis would be good in that third slot with Bastet and Jene. So there's some options, just not as many options as you probably would like to have. She is a bit limited in terms of the better teams that she could be in, but those are the ones that I could really think of right off the bat that would be pretty super beneficial. Other than that, it just would really depend on what you have on your account and what you're able to put together in terms of that. I mean, you could also do Hell as well, because that rhymed, because she increases the shadow damage on her ultimate. So all teammate gets a 30% shadow damage boost for 10 seconds. So that could work as well, and she can fit on that AI slot really nice. And do a lot of damage herself. So that's also another thing that you could look to. You know, Marduk is a stretch, but if you have him and you like him, you could use him, especially if you have a signature functor. But that is a stretch. That is a stretch. Obviously, you have all the other ones like Leviathan for the heals, damage reduction, Oneroy for the damage reduction, the shackle, the heals. There's a lot of good stuff going on there. But yeah, I mean, Sakura, obviously, for some boosting and some heals and stuff like that. But anyways, that is my recommendation and just my overview for Bastet. I think she's really good. I think she's a lot of fun. And I think she is a phenomenal A-rank modifier that looks great and can really boost your account. Once again, if you just put enough resources and you really build her up, should be really good for you. But anyways, let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know if you've been enjoying Bastet, or let me know if you've been still trying to build her up. Anyways, this has been long enough. I'm going to get on out of here. Remember to stand out, be different, have fun, go further beyond in everything that you do. My name is Cody. You call me further. I'll see you all next one. Bye, guys.